Hello and welcome to the Swan Song Project Podcast. My name is Ben Buddy Slatt and I'm the founder of the Swan Song Project and the host of this podcast. The Swan Song Project is a charity. We're based here in Leeds, England, and we help people who are facing the end of their lives or dealing with a bereavement to write and record an original song. We believe in celebrating lives, making memories and leaving legacies. If you'd like to find out more about the charity, you can visit our website, which is swansongproject.co.uk. The podcast features songwriters. Each episode I have a different songwriter on. I ask them to share with us one of their songs. We talk about how they wrote it. I ask them to share a songwriting tip, and I also ask them for a song that's meaningful to them in some way related to bereavement. This episode features Tommy Luce. It's a really fascinating conversation. We go in lots of different areas. I think you're really going to enjoy it. If you do, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. We've got lots more great guests coming up that you're not going to want to miss. Without further ado, here's Tommy Luce on the Swan Song Project Podcast. Enjoy. Okay, today I'm here with Tommy Luce. Thanks for joining me, Tommy.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking to you. This is the Swan Song Project Podcast. For anyone new to the podcast, I have a different songwriter on every episode, and we do it in 3 sections. So first, we're going to have one of Tommy's songs, and we're going to have a chat about how he wrote it. Then in section 2, I'm going to ask Tommy for a songwriting tip. And in section 3, we're going to talk about a song that's meaningful to Tommy in some way relating to bereavement. So over to you, Tommy. Which song of yours have you chosen to share with us today?
So the song of mine, it's from my album that I released in 2015. The album was called Nearly Unique, and it's the final track. It's the only one with vocals. It's called Memories of Me, and I wrote it for a friend of mine's mum who passed away.
I know you're too young, but it's probably best that way. You must be wondering just why I couldn't stay. So much confusion and so much left to say that I never wanted for it to end this way. If only I could tell you how I was suffering, and now my pain is gone, but I know that yours has only just begun. Only just begun. I'm sorry, all you have now are memories of me. I'm sorry that I'll never get to see you grow. I couldn't tell you at the time or make you see that I'm sorry to you both, but I won't be coming home. I hear you crying, wish I could dry your tears, and I hope that picture of us won't fade throughout the years. If only I could show you just how I'm missing you. And if I could see you both again, there's nothing that I wouldn't do. Oh, that I wouldn't do. I'm sorry, all you have now, memories of me. I'm sorry that I'll never get to see you grow. I couldn't tell you at the time, or make you see that I'm sorry to you both, but I won't be coming home. Sorry, all you have now are memories of me. I'm sorry that I'll never get to see you grow. I couldn't tell you at the time, or make you see that I'm sorry to you both, but I won't be coming home. Coming home, coming home.
Okay, so that was Memories of Me by Tommy Luce. Yeah, it's a beautiful song, Tommy. And yeah, looking forward to hearing more about writing it. So first, just for anyone watching it who might not have seen the instrument you're playing in the video, can you tell us a little bit about the instrument before we get on to talking about the song?
Of course, yeah. I don't actually have the one that you see in the video there. That's about 8 years ago, but I do have
Another one.
a slightly different one. And I will just bring it over quickly so you can see. So I'll put it up for you. Yeah, so this is a harp guitar, and it's got you can see me over there. So it's got a regular guitar neck, and in this case, it's got fan frets on it as well. And then it's got 6 bass strings, and it's built by the lovely folks over in Ireland, Emerald Guitars, and it's all carbon fiber. So whenever I fly it, I feel very safe. They'd have to run a tank over it to break it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an amazing instrument.
Well, I actually first came across a harp guitar thanks to your previous guest, Andy McKee. I saw him playing one, his tune Into the Ocean. I think it would have been about 2006 kind of time when he really exploded on YouTube. And I can remember seeing one and just thinking, wow, what's that? And started, searching the internet, and I eventually found someone selling one in Aberdeen on Gumtree. And I kept an eye on it for about a year, and it kept kind of coming down £100 a month. And eventually it became quite affordable. So I bought it and thought, all right, I guess I've got one of these now then. And I got it out of the box, and my daughter, who was about 5 at the time, I think, just said, "Oh, play me something then, Dad." And I thought, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. How do I do that? So yeah, it became a really interesting project. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I kind of see it very much as an arranging tool, and there's an event every year. It's just been actually this weekend. I couldn't make it this year, called the Harp Guitar Gathering over in America, where 50 or 60 or more harp guitar players from all over the world get together and compare anoraks and, talk about how many strings we have and all that. So yeah, it's a lovely community. Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. Really cool.
Yeah. How big is the community? Is there like is there a lot of people who play harp guitars? Like, it's not something that I see, again, only yourself and Andy, I think, are the only people that I've seen playing them.
I think, to me, I always have to, like, my own perspective with that. My feed is full of them because I know a lot. So in my my sort of standard day, every third person I speak to is a harp guitar player, I suppose, because I know lots of them because I'm kind of within the community. But I'd say there's probably a good few hundred at least, I would have thought. Quite a lot of people now. You've got companies such as Timberline as well, who are making them really good stuff at a really affordable price. So it's not a case of you have to go and spend 8,000 on a custom one. You can spend less than a quarter of that and get something that's really, really good. And so they're far more commercially available now. And so yeah, there are quite a few people out there, even if that isn't their only thing. You know, like I don't play it the whole time, and I'll do maybe 2 or 3 songs in a set. Or if I go and do a wedding or every now and then I'll go and do like an art installation, and I'll just sit in the corner for 2 hours and play backgroundy stuff. I tend to just take it then, because obviously you can play it as a normal guitar too. But yeah, there are quite a few of us out there, and I'm sure lots that I don't know as well.
Yeah.
So it's always nice when you find another one. If I see a picture on Facebook and someone's got a harp guitar in their profile picture, I think, oh, friend. better befriend them. They clearly need it,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice. There's quite a few of us out there.
And when you got it, did you just figure out that how to play it just based on what you liked? Or was there any kind of like I guess other things of how methods of playing it, or was it just I'll start playing and see what I like the sound of?
Well, for me, tracing it way back when I was about 4 or 5, I started tinkering around on the piano, and I played that for 6 or 7 years. And then when I got to secondary school, I wasn't very good at the piano, and I don't entirely blame the piano. I didn't practice enough. My mum was a wonderful pianist, and my dad's a wonderful many-thingist, guitar, violin, and they were super encouraging, but it just wasn't the thing for me. And when I got to secondary, I started playing the tuba. So it was, bass line central. And then I found the guitar about a year later. So I think I've always listened to the bass probably more than a lot of people would do, just because I was always the guy sat at the back of the orchestra playing the bass notes, So I think in that sense, it came quite naturally. But thankfully, Andy McKee made a lot of his tabs available. So I can remember getting Schindler's List, his lovely arrangement of that. And then obviously Into the Ocean as well. So I did my best to learn a few of those. And then you come across people like, obviously, Michael Hedges. There are so many people I could mention in here as well, and I'd hate to miss anyone. So everyone's great. But for me, it was all about Andy's tunes there, those two. And then, of course, you come across Michael Hedges. And I think I found the first thing I did was a Disney arrangement. I was working on a fingerstyle arrangement for 6-string. And I thought, well, I can whack a few bass notes in and just see what I can do. And then I used to get my daughter on stage with me, and she'd sort of nod like this when she needed to play the bottom string. So there's a few videos of that, which was a nice way to involve her. And then I think from there, it just became, well, what songs have I already written, or do I already play that have a bit of space that I could try and incorporate in a few bass notes? And then, of course, you get into the world of going and buying a Sharpie and writing where all the harmonics are on the bass strings for harp harmonics, and you think, okay, I can't even see where the rabbit hole where I'm in now. You get really deep into it. And then I don't have one with what are called super trebles on it as well. You can get one with the really high pitched strings. I'm tempted at some point. I think I'll probably go down that road, and that adds a whole other layer of musicality to it. So yeah, I found some tabs online, and there weren't, not going to say there were no videos, because of course there were, and YouTube's a totally different beast now, isn't it, compared to 15, 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now you can find 50 videos of anything, can't you? But yeah, Andy McKee was a huge thing with those two in particular. And then a bit later on, Michael Hedges, and I just kind of circled around really and did the best that I could.
Yeah, brilliant. So back to Memories of Me. What can you tell us about the writing of that song then?
Well, I think when I wrote that, it was quite a long time ago now. It was back in, I think, maybe 2014. And it was originally on 6-string. And when I released that album, Nearly Unique, it was all instrumental. And I'd had the harp guitar for 3 or 4 years by then, and I hadn't released anything with it, and I hadn't written anything specifically for it. And I just remember thinking, well, it'd be nice to actually feature it on the album, because the front cover of the album actually has a picture of the harp guitar with a bunch of other sort of instruments Frankensteined onto the front of it. And I kept it very simple, really, because I just thought, well, if I'm going to try and incorporate a bunch of extra notes, I don't want anything too complex. So I just picked a nice safe key A that I could get all the bass notes tuned to that would work with all of the main chords, so just A, D, and E, and an F sharp. And I think really it was just kind of the same as whatever I do now. I'm not much of a lyricist. rate myself very strongly with any of that. So I think I just ended up playing around with a really simple chord progression, but I could give the chords lots of space, thump a few bass notes out, and yeah, I think just talking to my friend, when she told me a few things about her mum and how she didn't get to spend enough time with her grandson. I think it was just one of those things. I didn't think too much about it, really. I just found myself scribbling down lots of the words that my friend used to describe her mum, and it gradually just came together, and I'd be waiting at a venue to do a gig or something. I'd have 20 minutes and I'd film myself, trying a few lyrics out or something like that, scribbling a few more down. And over a couple of months of doing that, I kind of vaguely had a song together and demoed it with my brother. And I actually got to play it with the London Symphonia Chamber Orchestra, which was amazing. I did a bunch of gigs for the local civic centre here, and they involved me in this project, and we got to pick one of our original songs. So there is a video of it floating around, but it was quite amazing hearing an orchestra playing a backing that I didn't write, to a song of mine. It was really lovely to be involved with that. So yeah, that's always felt quite special to me, that one.
Yeah, that's a beautiful song. And yeah, I mean, obviously you're very modest about your lyricism, but it's it's very moving lyrics. Had you written lyrical songs before, or was all your stuff instrumental before?
I had done here and there. I mean, I think for me, I'm 36 now, and I've been playing guitar for 23 years maybe. And I look back at how I got into guitar. I found a plectrum on the playground a day before or after the day my brother played me Iron Maiden for the first time, and it all just kind of, I just thought, well, this is it then. This is what I want to do forever, and got into all of that stuff, and formed the metal band we have, and we're still going. We don't do as much now, but we still do a bit. And so bands like Maiden, Black Sabbath, Metallica, Slayer, Pantera, all of that kind of thing. And then, of course, the whole new metal thing, Korn and Slipknot and Linkin Park, got into a lot of that too. And then when I saw Andy McKee in about 2005, 2006, it had never really occurred to me I don't think I'd really seen fingerstyle in that way before. I actually started on classical guitar because that's what we had in the house. My dad was a classical guitar player. So I got some technique down, and I didn't really want to just focus on that. I wanted to play Maiden stuff. And of course, I really thank him for it now, that he gave me some of that technique. And then I went and bought a guitar, acoustic guitar, just a crafter for a couple of £100 from the local music shop in about 2005 or 6, and started strumming away, and just started playing songs that I liked. And then when I came across Andy McKee stuff, I thought, oh blimey, didn't know this was a thing. And then you find Tommy Emmanuel and Don Ross and all of these incredible players. And then I started working in the guitar shop in 2007. So I got to play around with pickups and different guitars and all this kind of thing. And I think probably around about 2007, I thought, well, obviously the world needs another Andy McKee, and it's got to be me, clearly. There's nothing else for it, is there? As probably hundreds of other guitar players thought around then. And so I put loads and loads of focus on fingerstyle. Then I started playing weddings in about 2009. And of course, most weddings want songs. They want you to sit there and play the Lighthouse Family or something. They don't necessarily want, drifting, lovely though it is. Some of them here and there will be cool with it. And in fact, most people like a smattering of everything. And I was always in choirs when I was at school. I used to sing in the school choir and the church choir and that kind of thing. So I always liked singing, and I do backing vocals in the band. And I think I just got to a point maybe 10 years ago or thereabouts, where I just thought, well, I really like singing as well, and I like doing the fingerstyle stuff, but why would I just do one of them? I think I felt like I was restricting myself a little bit, really. And so the release I did in 2016 was all guitar and vocal, actually. And then the one in 17 was a bit of a mix. There was some instrumental, some electric, some acoustic. And I think it took me 3 releases to realize I like doing all of it. So I'll just release a bit of all of it. I think I get very, very hyper focused on one thing for a bit, and then I find a happy medium. took me a few releases. So yeah, I have a bit more of an even balance now, and really, there's nothing quite like strumming along and singing "Bridge Over Troubled Water" as loud as you can in a church. Really, is there?
Yeah.
Amongst other things in life, but there's
Yeah.
just something about the way that it reverberates. It's just amazing, isn't it? And fingerstyle sounds great too, but it's nice to have a bellow, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, yeah. And that seems to be a kind of a common thing that I kind of hear, like I guess the finding where your place is musically, what you want to do. And like, we speak to a lot of people who have a similar thing where, they get started and it's like, oh, this is my thing now, so I'm going to have to stick within these boundaries, and like, this is what I'm going to do. And then over time, be like, oh, actually, I like this as well, and I like this as well. And I think part of it is a discovery thing, isn't it? Part of it's a confidence thing, I guess, sometimes, where it's like, thinking about, I can do this, but I can also do this, and merging them all together. Do you have any kind of like set process for when you're coming up with something? Do you know in advance if it's going to be one that you're going to sing and you're going to have lyrics to, or if it's going to be an instrumental one, or does that just reveal itself as you go?
I think it probably does tend to reveal itself. As I was saying before we hit record, something I'm sure loads of people who write music or anything like that, probably similar to me, perpetually sifting through 20-second long videos on your phone because you just have these random flashes of inspiration. I suppose here and there I tend to know. I think if it's something a little bit more intricate and detailed, I haven't got what's the way of putting it? I haven't got as many brains as John Gom, so I can't play stuff that's as complicated as him, but as beautiful as him, and sing at the same time. And I think that's the same thing. When I listen to John's stuff, some of it is, all of the different rhythms and melodies that are going on at the same time, but none of it feels like it's for the sake of it. It always feels like it's a case of, well, no, it needs to go like this. So sometimes I'll have just really, really bare bones stuff that I think, well, that probably wouldn't be enough instrumentally. But at the same time, I think I've just relaxed a lot more over the years. And I think now I just tend to think, well, yeah, maybe it's really, really basic. Maybe it doesn't seem complex or thought out enough, but I like it. I don't have to play it to anyone. I don't have to release it if I don't want. So I just tend to try and let it all flow as best I can, really, and not do anything to sort of get in the way of that process. Because if it ends up not being very good, well, no one else has heard it, have they? So who cares? It doesn't matter. So yeah, let it happen. I find, and I just think things have a way of gradually morphing for me anyway, I think.
Yeah. And so is it usually starting on the guitar where the process starts for you? You're normally playing guitar and come up with something and follow that?
A lot of the time, yeah. Every now and then I'll come across a voice note in my phone. I think, what's this? Why is it 9 seconds long? And it's just me going da 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 da, or something like that. Come up with some little melody or other. And I think, oh, okay. Well, sort of right, might work, I guess. Didn't have a guitar with me clearly that day. So every now and then I'll come across one of those that I've done. But yeah, generally on the guitar. I think I remember reading years ago, I when I had my Steve Vai, I still have Steve Vai phases anyway, because I still love listening to that. But when I got into that in the Satriani and Eric Johnson, the G3 stuff about 20 years ago, I remember reading somewhere that Steve Vai he'll either, play something and he'll come up with something straight away, or he'll play for, 10, 15 hours and not use anything till he's been playing that long. And I wouldn't ever be that extreme because, I love playing guitar, but I don't want to play 15 hours a day. I've got other things to do. But I do find probably 9/10 of the time, when I pick up a guitar, if there's anything good in me that day, it usually comes out pretty quickly. So I just think, all right, turn everything else off for a minute, prop the phone up on the tripod and just have 10 minutes and just play. So that's generally how I find it works. But again, I try and be free and easy with it, because if I think like that, with tunnel vision, then I'll sit there for 10 minutes and think, oh, no, this is very good. So there's nothing good in there today, so I might just not bother trying. So it depends what else has been going on, I think, really. And I think a huge thing as well, and it might not seem related, but something that I definitely find whenever something big is happening, and in this case, very sadly, with Matthew Perry passing away the other day, however much of a friend's die-hard fan you might or might not be, I mean, I dread to think how many hours I spent watching Friends over the years, even if it's just in the background, and how many times I've played that theme tune at weddings and things like that, and just this constant outpouring of love. And it's not like I'm thinking I'll sit there and write a song about Matthew Perry as such, but it's a big thing, and it's a big part of my childhood, certainly. And I just kind of think, oh wow, it's like when Rick Mayall died. I've never really gotten past that one. That was such a big part of my childhood, and I can remember spending most of the week just working on ideas just to occupy myself, really, and watching lots of episodes of The Young Ones and Bottom and things like that. And so I find that it stirs something in me when something big happens.
Yeah, that's a really good piece of awareness to, to use that as a method. So when something like that happens, you make sure you've got extra time to sit and play and process it.
I think so. I think it's all just, learning yourself, isn't it? And some things you can tweak and some things you can change. But if you're wired a certain way, something big happens, if you're a bit wobbly for a couple of days, you think, all right, well, I'll try and use it then. You're allowed to be sad about stuff, aren't you? A lot of stuff is sad. And but I think with like when I wrote Memories of Me, I never even met my friend Josie's mum, but it didn't matter to me, really. It wasn't about writing about someone I knew, like when she told me about her, I just thought, well, I feel like I know enough about her now to do this. And if she didn't, I did say to her, if you don't like it, I won't put it out. I won't have to, it's not like I'm going to be putting a picture of her on the end of it or anything like that. But, luckily she liked it and gave me her blessing to do it. But yeah, it's just something I know about myself. I know things that when certain things happen, they rattle me a bit, and I just think, oh, blimey, okay, this is going to be a busy week. So clear the evenings as much as I can and just have a guitar around a lot,
Yeah, that sounds like a good way to do it. I think it's the kind of thing for me, it's like sometimes I'll do that, but I don't often think to do it as often as I should. Of when something like that happens, knowing that you're going to have to process it in some way and making that space to do it. I'm going to try and keep that in my mind for future times. So thanks for that, Tommy. I feel like, I don't know whether this is, you get a lot of the questions around, writing music and writing lyrics, and people like separating the two. And what I was going to say was that one of the things that's quite nice about playing instrumentally is, you're not conscious, you're not trying to use the words to express what you're going through, particularly with something like that. And particularly, I think something like, say, the death of Matthew Perry, where it's like, celebrity deaths are always it's difficult to measure how they're going to impact people, isn't it? Everyone's got such a different relationship with them and things like that. And so I often find it quite hard to explain. Like for me, it was when Leonard Cohen died. That really shook me up. That was a big impact on me. He'd had a big impact on my life. And same with Matt Lanigan a few years ago. Matt Lanigan died as well. That really got me. But then I find it quite hard to put that into words. But when you just let yourself play instrumentally, it feels like you're kind of processing it in a different way. But then on the flip side of that, then I do feel like then it's a similar thing of like not put when you're doing it with words, to just not put the pressure on yourself of like, I need to logically explain. Like, it's the let yourself write without judging what it is, and whatever comes out in that writing process is a way of processing it, even if it's actually got nothing to do with it to someone reading it. It probably is the same process, but I think it's so easy to take words literally all the time, isn't it?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I think it's it might not seem related, but something that makes me think of. I'm a big Tarantino fan, and quite recently, my girlfriend and I have been to see a whole bunch of anniversary films, and it was the 30th anniversary of Pulp Fiction, and obviously the briefcase scene in it where you never actually find out what it is. And I can remember my old English teacher when I was at secondary. She did her thesis on it, and we used to talk about it all the time. And I've seen the interview before. It's quite an old one, but there was a really nice one with Quentin Tarantino, and he just said, "Whatever you want is in there, because then it's your film." And so it's a different film for everyone. So there are all sorts of theories, aren't there? Like it's Marcellus Wallace's soul, and that's why he's got the plaster on the back of his neck and all of this kind of thing. And I really like the idea of that. And I think, song-wise, when it comes to lyrics and stuff like that, some things are fairly obvious what they mean, aren't they? But I suppose when you get things that may be a bit more metaphorical and stuff like that, you take it to mean whatever you take it to mean, don't you? And some things are maybe they're a bit more risque when you get older, and they still were. It's like when you watch Ace Ventura when you're 12, then you watch it when you're 25, you think, oh wow, okay, yeah. I didn't realize that's what I meant. So I suppose that perception changes in time, doesn't it, as well? And I think, again, I know I'm mentioning Andy McKee a lot, not just because you had him on recently, but he was such a huge influence to me, and I've been fortunate to meet him a few times, and he's a lovely guy, and he's done so much for people, all ages, really. I think it's still inspiring people, but I know his tagline, I think on his Facebook and probably on other profiles, and this won't be verbatim, but it's along the lines of, I write instrumental music for words that I don't know how to say, or something like that.
Yeah.
Very eloquently. But I really like that. And then, of course, I think some people are far more lyrically inclined. I mean, my brother, who I do a lot of work with, he's the other guitar player and main vocalist in our band. I've always found with him, I'll spend a month on 4 lines and I'll think, right, I'm quite happy with that. And then he'll, show me something he's written in 5 minutes, and I think, how's that better than what I've done? That's annoying. And I used to get a bit, well, I suppose I still do get a bit frustrated, but at the same time, I just think it's kind of like when you see someone, doing well, you can either be really jealous or you can think, oh, that's brilliant. I wonder how I can do that well as well. Let it inspire you rather than, be jealous of it, because, it's a two-sided thing, isn't it? And I think lyrically, something that I always tend to do if I'm getting at a bit of a wall with lyrics, I think, God, there are so many words. Some of them have got to work. I'll go and get a dictionary or a thesaurus or something, and sometimes I do find that helps actually. It's everyone's brain muscles work in different ways, don't they? And I think of songs that I really like, or lyricists that I really like, and I try and kind of backwards analyze it and think, well, what do I really like about it? Maybe it's just really simple, or maybe it's just the fact that it's, I don't know, maybe very minimalistic, that kind of thing. So I've forgiven myself for not being a world-class lyricist long ago. Yeah. And I just want to try and keep learning with it, really, and not pilfer or anything, but still try and be inspired by people and see what I can learn, really, because your experiences shape how you write, I think, don't they? And as you get older, you want different things. And of course, you've experienced more stuff as well, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. When you're writing lyrics, do you have any kind of processes that you often use for that? So, like, would you normally have, like, say, a handful of tunes and guitar parts that you like, and then sit down and think, well, I'm going to write some lyrics for these ones? Would you have an idea in mind of what you want to say, or would you just sit down and would the tune inform what you're going to write about, or do you have particular themes or ideas that you'd like to tell in lyrics?
I usually find I read quite a bit, and I often find that one sentence from something, or a short story or something will just kind of loosen something. The album that Memories of Me was on, there's a tune on there, and it's an instrumental one, and it's called I Belong in Tomorrow. And the reason that I called it that was when I was a kid, I can remember reading this book, and it was about this, I can remember bits of it, but I can remember enough to kind of relay the story reasonably. And it's about this little boy who's wandering through a park, and he comes across all sorts of people, and with various problems. And one of them, he comes across this child who's crying, and says, "Oh, why are you upset?" And said, "Oh, well, I've gotten left behind. I'm supposed to be in tomorrow, but I'm stuck here." And maybe I'm getting that mixed up. There's a tiger involved with it, and the tiger says, "Oh, it's fine. Get on my back, and I'll run really quick, and I'll run you into tomorrow." And I remember the little kid saying, "Oh, I'll send you a postcard from tomorrow." And I just remember being amazed by that when I was a kid. And that's all a bit jumbled up, but that's the basic kind of idea of it. And I just loved that. I just remember thinking, that'd be really cool, wouldn't it? And another one was when I was a kid, I used to read a lot of Famous Five and Secret Seven. And I can remember my mum saying, oh, there was a book that she read years and years ago where they all go into a cave and they all see a bunch of colours they've never seen before. And that fascinated me as well. And I still think about that now sometimes. And I just think, well, what would that look like? You know, and you go in B&Q and it says, oh, you've got 1.2 million different paint options. And you think, well, I can think of about 7. I don't think there's red and there's not red, isn't there? And so a few albums later, I can remember, rereading a bunch of Famous Five and Secret Seven. And I don't think I ever came across that particular one, but it just really got me thinking. And one of the tracks that I ended up coming up for that, I called it Ruby Blue, and my dad played violin on it. And so I suppose that just prompted it, really. I just find I have these little sparks, and so whenever I do, if it's lyrical, I'll probably just talk them into my phone because it's quicker. And then I don't try and deliberately marry them up, but I do find that maybe when I've got 10 or something like that, I think, right, I'll have a bit of a session now, because otherwise you can just keep going for months and months, can't you, and end up with 50 random riffs and bits here and there. So every now and then I will have a deliberate session and think, right, does any of this flow? And I'll try maybe 4 sets of lyrics over the same chords, or 3 or 4 different sets of chords under the same lyrics or something, just to experiment a bit. So I try and have a bit of a set process with that, but sometimes I find I could be my own worst enemy with it, really. If you're too free and easy with it, then you never end up finishing anything. Which I think is something that I'm sure most of us encounter at some point. Do you ever find that when you're coming up with stuff, do you find that finishing, putting a full stop on something is quite a difficult thing to do?
Yeah, it's one of the questions I ask people a lot on here about, like, what people's sense of when a song's finished, because obviously songs can go on and on and on. You can just keep rewriting things, and completion is like, and there's the temptation, unless you've got strict deadlines of, like, you need to have an album done by a particular amount of time. If you're just writing for your own sake and your own enjoyment, you can just keep going and going and trying to make something perfect. But I also I'm quite I'm quite impatient in a lot of ways. So when I'm doing things, I kind of like to try and wrap things up. And there's something satisfying to me about when it feels like something's done. I used to have a big thing about always wanting to perform new songs live. That was like getting it to a stage where I could do it on stage. Would feel like a nice point where I had to get to the song to that level. But yeah, something I find really interesting of, like, when a song's done, when it feels right, and what that's like for someone.
I think something that's really helped me with that, and it might sound a bit of an odd thing to quote, but I read this some years ago. I think it was in one of those, like QI books with quotes. I love quotes. I find those really helpful. And I can remember coming across one a handful of years ago, and it was John Bon Jovi, funnily enough. And I thought, wow, the great philosopher. I wonder what he's got to say. And I don't write anybody off with that. I make a joke about it, but at the same time, he's been in the industry 40 odd years. I'm sure he's got some worthwhile lessons that I could learn from. And this particular one, all it was map out your future, but do it in pencil. And that really helped me, because I think with a song, I'm not great at recording, and I don't enjoy it that much because I'm not great at it. And I think I've gotten better over the years. But my brother, again, who's a full-time, audio engineer and videographer now, he's very good at getting me to do what I need to do. He's very good at keeping me within certain kind of parameters. And I've gotten better, but I could always still get better. And I think the way I've come to think of it is, because I like playing live the most, the song can be, if I'm doing 10 gigs in a month or something, it can be different every night. It doesn't matter. But I suppose when I record that final version, that's the final version, but I've done it in pencil. I've not gone over it in the red beryl pen that you get when you get your pen license at secondary school, and I've not rubbed it out underneath it, but you got to let the ink dry first or it smudges, doesn't it? It's a nightmare. So yeah, that's how I've come to think of it. Like a recorded version of the song is sort of finished in pencil, and then it kind of comes to life every night. And it maybe sounds a little bit kind of hippie-ish or whatever. I find myself saying that about a lot of things, but that's how I've come to think of it. You know, it actually allows me to finish stuff then as well, because otherwise I think, oh, I've had this for. I've got ideas kicking around that I think I've had this for 15 or more years. You know, I've never done anything with it, and I'm sure there's a place for it one day. Don't know where or what it will be, or maybe never. So yeah, that's how I find anyway. Think of it as it's finished in pencil, and then when you play it live, if playing live's your thing, you know, some people don't want to play live, and that's fine too, you know. But that's what works for me anyway.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. The way that I always like, which I know I've said in another episode of this recently, we talked about this, of thinking of the recording as like that's at that moment in time. You know, that's that song at that moment of time, rather than that's the definitive version. Even though, like, in some ways it often does become the definitive version, doesn't it? But in reality, it's like that is that version. That's the song at that moment in time. And then in 10 years, the song might be very different, and people play it live, or might re-record it in different ways and stuff like that.
100%.
Yeah. When you were talking about the stories and things, that's that really kind of like, that's what I think that's my favorite thing about songwriting, when you've got like either a concept or like a particular story that you've heard, or just something about something that you've heard that's really kind of moved you, and you're really kind of fascinated by like an idea, and then trying to convey that in your own way is one of my favorite things. And sometimes it's really hard. Like it might be like, say, like a novel or something, and you want to then try and like convey a similar story in 3 or 4 minutes. But that's always the challenge. What I get most excited about, like how can I repurpose this feeling that I've got from this other piece of art and convey that in my own way. That always gets me excited.
Totally. And if I'll tell a quick story there, if that's all right, because you've just reminded me. I was playing through some tunes the other day. Very recently, I'll show you this one, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So this is also made by Emerald. This is a baritone.
Nice.
So yeah, B through to B, really gutsy, and huge thank you to my family at G7th Capos. I'll talk more about them in a bit, but massive thanks to them. I got a baritone some years back. I'd always been interested because, again, Andy McGee playing one, and I just thought, oh wow, that's a cool idea. And of course, you tune your strings B to B, even if you're using 13s, which is pretty heavy for a regular acoustic. They're still pretty floppy when you get all the way down there. I ended up I've had a few baritones over the years, and I can remember doing a couple of tunes on baritone. And before I worked for G7th, I used to work for an exam board based in London called Rock School, and I used to do a lot in the UK for the first couple of years. This was between sort of 2014 and 20 or thereabouts. And I used to do some of the BTEC marking as well, so the sort of college level, and then I used to do the theory examining. And I got into doing international tours. And the first long one that I did was Hong Kong. And so I went to Hong Kong for 6 weeks, then I did a week in Vietnam as well. And I can remember in Hong Kong, probably one of my favorite places to go to in the world. It was life-changing, and there were 3 of us there as well. So, you know, whichever day off you have, there's usually 2 of you with it. So you think, well, let's go and see a temple, let's go and see a Buddha, let's go and do something that isn't sitting in the hotel, you know. And I can remember there was a McDonald's just down the road from where I stayed, and I used to go out for a run, you know, just sort of keep myself going and try and stay in reasonable shape while I was out there. And because I love traveling and trying all the different grub, and if you're not careful, all you do is eat in your spare time. At least that's for me anyway. I love it. And I can remember I was going for a jog, and it was really, really humid. It was about this time of year actually, and so I gunned, a liter of water or something. And as I was running back, I thought, wow, I really need to nip to the toilet here. So I nipped into McDonald's, and all of a sudden I thought, I need to go a lot more than I realized. So I started running up, and I lost my footing, and I fell over, and I headbutted something, and I wasn't sure what it was. But then I heard this big crash, and I thought, it's not perfect. but I guess we'll see what the damage is. And I'd slipped over and I'd headbutted this clown who was holding a tray of jelly and ice cream for this kid's party. And yeah, and there's not really any way to style this out, is there? And I don't know if they still have them. They probably do, but they have a thing called an octopus card over there, and you put money on it at the train station, and you just, like contactless here, you just swipe it. So I thought, I better just give him 50 quid or something. I just did that and then walked out. I think I even forgot to go to the toilet. Brilliant. And when I got back to the hotel, our guitar's in the studio at the minute, but I have a guitar that folds up. It's called a Journey guitar. Huge thanks to the guys at Journey. They got me to my first NAMM about 5 years ago, where I met the G7th guys, funnily enough. They're 20 minutes down the road, but I met them in California. There you go. And I bought that guitar on that tour, which kept me playing. And after I'd done that, I was a bit flustered. And I remember going back and thinking, well, I'll try and get something positive out of this. And so I ended up writing a tune that I released on my third album, and I called it Talking the Walk. And thought that kind of sums up how I felt about it. And yeah, that was quite an experience. And I just thought, I can be embarrassed about it, but what's the point? It's done now, you know. So yeah, I look back at that and sort of think, yeah, it wasn't great, but I got something out of it. And whenever I song now, I just think, oh, I remember doing that. Yeah. I bet the band remembers it as well. Probably all the kids and the poor McDonald's staff who cleaned it all up. I did offer to help, but I think they figured I'd done enough. So I just kind of skulked away at that point and thought, oh well, there you go.
Yeah,
I've completed McDonald's today. I think better find another one to go to now for the next 5.5.
Yeah, nice way of capturing that moment in time in the song.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, to try to find something positive, don't you, out of the very thin silver lining, and it is thin sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Just touching back to Memories of Me before we move into section 2. So it was your friend told you the story about her mum, was it, you said?
Yeah.
And then was it just that the story then moved you and you thought, I'd like to do a song like this, and then you asked her about it, and was that how it kind of came about? And I guess what I was kind of interested in particularly is, so this obviously kind of feels a bit related to what we do at Swan Song, where it's writing songs about real people with them connected as well, and the kind of responsibility, I guess, to feel like you're doing it justice and you're not going to misrepresent anything. And so I'm guessing I'm kind of wanting to ask you about what that process was like for you, and how it felt writing it and sharing it and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for so my friend in question, her name's Josie. We met when I was at sixth form, so this would have been 2003, and her mum died. I believe it would have been that year, I think. So I think sort of 2014 or so. And I never met her mum, but we kept in touch, and it was we didn't see each other a tremendous amount, here and there, busy lives and everything. And I can remember when she sort of announced it on Facebook, I just remember her putting up a picture of her mum, and I think the way that she worded it really hit me. It wasn't just a case, wasn't the typical kind of, I'll miss you. I just remember her putting, sleep well, mum, I'll miss you. And it was the way that she put sleep well. And that just really, really resonated for some reason. I can't really explain why. And that just got me a bit. And I can remember messaging her about it and, sending best wishes. And I didn't specifically say, oh, I'm going to write a song about it for you, because I thought, the last thing you need when you've lost someone is someone else making it about them. That wasn't what I wanted to do at all. I just thought, well, I didn't even know her, but the fact that she was going through that moved me a lot, and she was a good friend of mine, and I just bit by bit ended up putting this together. And I think really, it was just a case of, as I gradually kept in touch with her, she told me more and more about her mum and things they'd done and what she was like as a person, what she enjoyed, what she didn't. And really, I did it from the perspective of her mum. So lyrically, it's essentially Josie's mum talking to Josie's son. And so like in the chorus, as we'll have heard in the words and everything, I'm sorry to you both, but I won't be coming home. as in he was too young to understand it. He was only 2 or 3, and of course, when you're that age, you don't have a terrific amount of understanding of certain things. So that's kind of how I approached it. It was just a case of grandma talking to grandson, and I'm really sorry I'm not there, but you don't understand why at the minute, but you will in time, and I think that was what it was really. That was just what felt right to do. And I suppose in terms of actually coming up with that, I think I did feel a bit of a responsibility to not just to make it good, but to be sensitive with it as well, because obviously when someone's not here anymore, that's about as final as it gets, isn't it? Coming back from that, it's an obvious thing to say, I know. And I suppose, the older you get, the more people have died. And I didn't even meet her. So I suppose from that, it was a bit of a different angle for me. I wasn't writing about someone that I lost who I was close with. I had to kind of imagine certain things from a different perspective. And I was pleased that she thought I'd captured some of that, so it was a nice feeling in that sense. But I think I did feel quite a responsibility, because it's something that if you're not careful, it could go a bit wrong. I think if you and I have certainly not naming any songs or names, but there have definitely been things over the years when I know people who have small artists such as myself, someone's passed away and they've maybe gone about it in a way that is a bit more about them rather than the person who's passed away. And it's always tricky. I don't think it's ever intentional. I'd like to think it's not. But it could be a bit tricky, especially now. It was different back then. Social media was obviously a thing, but it didn't rule life quite as much. I think, it's very, it can be very me, can't it now? This person's died. I'm really sad about it. Of course you are. We all are, depending on what it is. But it can be very easy to overstep the line with that stuff, I think, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. And what was it like sharing it with? Did you share it with Josie through the process, or did you finish the song and then share it with her?
Yeah, I just finished it and sent her over a private link on YouTube, I think, or just an MP3. And I just remember her writing back saying thank you, and that I think thank you, and it made me cry, but in a good way, kind of thing. And I thought, oh well, I'll take that, and I was relieved, really, because again, it was just one of those things. You don't want to deliberately upset someone, but I think the thing that I've found over the years, it's kind of like if I go to a wedding or something, even if I'm not booked to play at it, quite often I'll get asked to play something or do something, and I've come to appreciate that more and more over the years. It's something I can do that gives people a lasting memory. And the second album that I did, the one after Nearly Unique, I did it in 2016. And it was very, very bereavement focused, actually. And it was actually a friend of mine. It is obviously a very triggering subject. I hope it's okay to mention it. Obviously, if it's not, then please feel free to edit it out. But he took his own life when he was very young. He was only 20. And something that really helped me through that process, which I think links into this for various reasons. I was doing guitar lessons with him at the time, and he didn't turn up for a few, and I was off to do a tour up in Scotland with Rock School, and I just didn't have a minute to reply to the last message that he sent me, and I was new to it, so I thought, well, I'll give him a shout when I get back. He's clearly a bit all over the place. I'll have a chat. And then I turned my phone on the first day of exams, and my dad had messaged me and just said, I'm really sorry to see the news about Oscar. And I thought, oh God, you don't say that if someone's broken their leg, do you? And a part of me definitely blamed myself for not replying to him sooner. And I thought, well, maybe he would have told me something. Perhaps I could have saved him. And I don't think I could. I see that a bit more now. And I just, for months, I just trawled the internet trying to find this one thing that would help me to find some peace with it. And eventually I found it, and I named the album after it. And I don't know how I ended up on it now, particularly. I got no idea what I Googled, but it was a blog, and it was all about loss. And the person who wrote it said, some things you can't fix, you just have to carry them. And that really helped. So I called it Carrying the Unfixable. And it was just one of those things. It was a time in my life where there were a lot of big changes in my personal life as well. and I kind of used all of them within that. So it was a very cathartic thing, So even though it was very sad, I feel like I managed to get a lot of positivity from it as well. And so I look back on that now and think, oh blimey, yeah, it was quite a heavy period actually, but I got something good from it. Got these 5 songs came from that, and I'm really proud of that, And I suppose it just, if you can do something that will last forever, a song as such. With my friend Oscar, I played at his funeral, and it was a real pleasure to do that, and it was very unique. It was an outside, so it was a meadow burial, and I didn't know that was a thing. And so his mum's an artist, and she whitewashed the coffin and put a load of band stickers along from bands that he liked. So we all stuck stickers all over the coffin, and then we all threw in guitar books and picks and stuff like that. And I taught him on and off for about 10 years. And some months before that, I was at the Metal Hammer Awards with a friend of mine, and I met a woman called Rita Haney, who was the longtime partner of Dimebag Darrell from Pantera. And she gave me an RIP Dimebag wristband that Kerry King from Slayer had made for her. And I thought, oh, wow, keeping hold of this. And when he died and we got the chance to put things in the grave with him, I thought, he'd like that. So I chucked that in there for him as well. And I just thought, yeah, it's a little thing. And he'll never know about it as far as I'm aware. Maybe he does, who knows. But these little things all feel like lots of mini full stops in time to me. The more I look back at them, and it helps me, remember them fondly, I suppose. Tiny little things that I can do, and not things that you go on Facebook and brag about them. And fair enough, I'm talking to you about it now, but I don't make a huge thing of saying these things. It was a personal thing that I wanted to do, and I'm fortunate that I was able to do it. So we all express things in different ways, don't we? But he did like that, I think. Chucking guitar books in and stuff like that, and CDs, and sticking band stickers all over the coffin. Bands that only him and 3 other people had heard of. He was great. So so I went on a little bit on that one, but it just kind of, I thought it was really kind of relevant to that, and it's a tricky thing, isn't it, knowing how to process all that? But I think it's a real privilege being able to write something or perform something for someone, and they'll have that forever. And it makes me very grateful that I can do that.
Yeah, and I thank you for sharing, Tommy. Yeah, very moving story, and obviously sorry to hear about your friend and what you went through there. But then the flip side, and it's great you've got such kind of awareness of how beneficial you find the creative process, and how it's been there to help you through these times. And yes, what you were saying about playing at weddings and stuff like that as well, like recognizing it as something that obviously not everyone does. Not everyone does play music, and I believe everyone does have the ability to do it, but not more people have the time to put into it. So when you're someone who can make music and can process things in that way, it's a beautiful thing to do, and to then be able to share it as well. So because you never know who then might hear your music, who's going through a similar situation, and like you were saying, you were searching for something and you found that blog that was just what you needed. Your album might be just what someone else needs who's going through a similar thing. They might find it and just be like, oh, this. I'm a big believer in sharing those kind of things, and
support.
How much it can help other people. Brilliant. So let's move into section 2 now, shall we? This is where I ask my guests for a songwriting tip. So what would your tip be for us today, Tommy?
I thought about this quite a lot, actually. And the more I thought about it, I kept coming back to the same thing. I guess it's kind of a 2-part thing. But rather than actually being use these chords or use these lyrics or whatever, something that's been really, really valuable to me is having someone that you're willing to share anything that you come up with. So sort of a creation buddy, if you like. And I have a few people I do it with. One person in particular, that whenever I'm about to release something, sometimes I'll play it to people when it's in a bit of a semi-finished state, and sometimes I'll just record it and say, oh, I've done this version, got any feedback for me? And I know they'll always be honest. And it won't be a case of, no, I think that's awful, you should start it again. It'll maybe be, well, have you thought about this for this bit? And I do the same for them as well. And I find that really helpful, because I think the thing that I find is when you're sitting there for, hours on end working on things and you record lots of versions, I tend to give myself a 3-take limit these days. I just think, well, I'll pick from these 3 different ones then, because, if you go into a guitar shop and you try 10, you've forgotten the second one by the time you get to the 4th one. At least I have anyway. So I think limitation is quite important, but just having another pair of ears and eyes that you can trust, and I think ideally that's reciprocal, and that really helps me to finish stuff. In turn, it helps me to finish stuff, and I kind of guess the second part of that, I'm sure there's lots of people who have done similar things here, but I saw a really good Ed Sheeran interview a year or 2 ago now, and someone in the crowd was asking about, from what I can recall, they were being a bit facetious. It was a bit kind of, how do you know when you've written a good song or a bad one, if ever, kind of thing, From what I remember, it was someone who clearly didn't like what he did that much. But I thought his response was great. He just said, well, we've all got lots of bad songs in us and you need to get them out. And if you're working on a song and you think, gosh, this is terrible, finish it anyway, because then you haven't got to think about it anymore. And you never have to play it to anyone if you don't want to. Just finish it, record it, leave it on the desktop and never listen to it. And then you might listen to it in 5 years and think, all right, well, most of it's terrible, but there's one bit in there that's not completely awful. So I think having someone there that you can use as a bit of a sounding board, that, you do it for each other. And I just find that feedback, whatever the feedback might be, I find it helps me to finish things and just put that full stop in pencil. And then maybe no one ever hears it. And I've got a few things I've certainly not finished or almost finished. I've done demo versions and never played to anyone yet. So yeah, that would be my thing. I thought about it quite a lot, and I think it's a good lesson in humility as well.
Yeah.
Hopefully I don't need too much of that, but I don't think it does any harm. Sometimes I think it's easy to think, oh, this is job done. This is great. And then someone might listen to it. Well, have you thought about this? Well, that's annoying, but yeah, you're right. Actually, maybe not. Or maybe I won't apply that to this one, but maybe to the next one I will. So I find it very helpful. I think it can be a very lonely process, and I suppose some people really like that. But I do like bouncing ideas off people. That's always been something I'm interested in, how other people's brain muscles work, because we all, am I hearing something or seeing something exactly the same as everybody else? I don't have the best hearing. It's kind of a hereditary thing, but also, sitting and any musician, I think, when I used to listen to, 40 hours of drum exams for 6 weeks in a row in China 3 times a year, probably didn't help. Even with earplugs, you can only make drums so quiet. A snare is a snare, isn't it? So yeah, often perception fascinates me as well. And I suppose a lot of that is partly, natural ability in inverted commas, but whatever you're into or however you like to do things, you might be someone who, if Johnny Cash is your thing, anything more than 3 chords might seem a little bit over the top and unnecessary. And if you're into, Dream Theater and Symphony X and all that, you might think, well, maybe add a 4th chord to the next one, So I'm interested in people's feedback from all ends of the spectrum, and I deliberately do that. I'll ask people who do a similar thing to me, and then I'll ask people who don't play an instrument, who are just consumers, if you like, and then people that I know will always be really brutally honest with me, because sometimes that's fun as well, and then people who are into the same genre, people who aren't, people who actively don't like this kind of thing. I like to get all of it, kind of gives you a nice palette to work with, and then ultimately I decide what I do. But because I don't have labels, I don't have any of that stuff, and I'm not, throwing shade on any of that stuff, but I don't have any of that, so I haven't got anybody telling me anything needs to be a certain way or deadlines or anything. So I just take my time with it, really, and if I like it, I'll put it out. I won't try and make anything sound a certain way, because I don't need to, and it wouldn't mean that much to me, I don't think. I'd rather it sounds like something who maybe isn't that successful would say, I suppose, but I'd rather do the small gigs, knowing I'm doing stuff that makes me happy, than try to do something massive for the sake of it. And again, that's not any shame on anyone who does huge stuff. Whatever you do is great. I like Ed Sheeran. I do. I like lots of his stuff, and he happens to play to a colossal amount of people. But I think people do forget that he didn't always do that. Off playing to no one 300 nights a year, and it's very easy to get annoyed at someone for their seemingly overnight success, isn't it? You think, well, what maybe the last night of 20 years of solid doing it was overnight. But don't see all the prep, do you?
It take a long time to be an overnight success.
yeah, definitely.
But no, I think that's really good advice. And I like I think the having other people to share, I think it's a bit like an accountability thing as well, isn't it? Of like, if people know that you're working on something, just kind of knowing that someone else is kind of, interested in some way, or like involved in the process, even if it is just as a sounding board, someone else who cares a little bit about what you're doing and will listen to it. And I do like the idea of having a range of sounding boards, if possible, as well, of people who have different tastes and things like that. So then we'll hear things very differently than someone else might do. I think that's really good advice. And I think it's a good step, particularly if you know someone who's like going to be fair with you and be like, and not just like insult you, but like, if you're going to be critical in a constructive way and helpful. It's like a good test of nerve, I guess, for you, isn't it, to get to be like, right, I'm going to share this with somebody now, and it might be a bit nerve wracking, but I know they'll be sensitive about it, and they'll be like, it feels like a good step, doesn't it?
I think so. It's the older. I think it was in. I was reading a few biographies recently. I think it was Nikki Sixx, and it was along the lines of, "Your best mate will tell you your breath stinks and you need a bath." I think, please do tell me. So I think it's good to have it from both sides. If you've got lots of yes people around you all the time, then that's all you hear, isn't it? If you're not careful, and I think you just kind of that can slow down your improvement, I think. So, definitely.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Tommy.
Hi everyone, I'm Kath O'Neill, and back in May this year I was diagnosed with grade 4 stomach cancer. I'd heard of the Swan Song Project on the Chris Evans radio show, so I contacted Ben about writing a song to inspire my 10-year-old grandson Rufus to improve his confidence. Working on the song gave me a distraction from my cancer, which was what I really needed. The process didn't take long, about half a dozen sessions online with Ben. He put the song together with some music friends that he has, including Boff Whaley from Chumbawamba. The process was absolutely brilliant. I got so much fun from it. My family loved the song, including Rufus. Thanks for the memory, Ben. I'll never forget it.
To help more people like Kath write their swan songs, please donate to the Swan Song Project today.
So let's move into section 3 now, shall we? This is where I ask my guests to share with us a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. And what I'll do here is I'll put the link in the description of the episode. So if you're listening to this or watching this and you don't know the song, you want to go listen to it, you can pause us, check out that link, and then come back. So which song have you chosen for us for this section, Tommy?
So the song I've chosen for this is So Much by Newton Faulkner.
Brilliant. So if you're not familiar with the song, you can go and listen to it now. It's a beautiful song. I hadn't heard the song before until you sent me it. Very powerful song.
I think it's one of those songs to me. With Newton Faulkner, obviously he's been around for a long time now, and we got to see him quite recently in King's Lynn, just near where we live. He came over and played a festival, and he's one of those guys. He pops up at guitar shows and does meet and greets and that kind of thing. I've got some of his lyrics tattooed on my back, funnily enough, and he's one of those guys that I think, what would this have been? Probably 2005 kind of time, I suppose. I started listening to his stuff around about the time I got into acoustic guitar a bit more as well, and along with Andy McKee. Obviously Newton uses a lot of different tunings and extended techniques and percussive elements and that kind of thing, and he's a really nice guy. again, I've met him 2 or 3 times now, and I don't know him personally, obviously, but I've spent a little bit of time with him on a few occasions, and I've seen how he is when he meets people and his on-stage persona. And I know several people, people who have like done his tab books for him and things like that, and worked with him. And they all say the same thing. He's what you see is what you get. He's just a really nice guy. And I remember going to see him when I was at university in Coventry. We went to see him in Warwick, and at the Arts Centre. And he had a big screen behind him, and he had a floor organ as well. And he broke his wrist. I think I'm getting the time periods right, but it'll be give or take. After he did his first album, Built by Robots, he broke his wrist. I think he was skiing. And so the next album, which is the album with so much on, he broke his wrist just before it. So he had to write most of it with this floor organ. And so when he came to play all of it live, he said, well, I wrote it on this, so I thought I'll use this as well. So he had one camera pointing at his face, one at his hands, and then one at his feet as well. And there were bits where he'd put different instruments on there as well. So there was a bit where he uses I think it was a what's it called? Not a mellotron. I can't remember the name of the instrument now, but it appears on one of the tracks on there. It's called Lipstick Jungle. And it's a very brief bit. And he just put a little video of him adding these 4 bars on the video behind him and said, well, then I haven't got to pay someone to come and play that, have I? You've just got me the whole night. And I don't think I'd ever really seen anyone do that before. And it was really cool. It was a very unique experience. And something I really love about the song, he wrote it about Eric Roche. Anyone into the acoustic guitar world, especially fingerstyle, will know of Eric Roche, certainly. And he very tragically passed away. He was Newton's teacher and mentor, I believe. And it's all about him, thanking him for everything that he did. And, I hope you can see how well I'm doing. And a lot of it's because of you. And something that I always used to find when I used to do these trips, so there was a bit of overlap, obviously, with working with G7th. And then when I was still working with Rock School, before the pandemic hit, I used to go and do these trips anywhere between sort of a week and 7 weeks. And I got to go to some really far-flung places. And I'm the sort of person, I don't really process the experience while I'm having it. I usually find 3 months later, I'll think, wow, that was hot, wasn't it? That was fun. So I got to go to India, I got to go to Vietnam, mainland China, Hong Kong, Dubai. It was great. And I always seemed to find that when I would go on these trips, there'd be one song in particular, or two, maybe one artist, in fact, and a handful of their songs that I would really gravitate towards. And on the first mainland China trip that I did, it was Newton Faulkner with this particular album. There were 4 or 5 songs. And there's just something about the way that his voice breaks up right at the very end, when he sings one particular lyric that just hits me. It's just the kind of thing that when you listen to it, it just sends a little bit of a genuine shiver. And you just think, I can't really explain why it does that, but it just does. And I think it's a combination of the quality of his voice and quite a simple song in terms of the guitar part. It's not massively complicated. It's very slow and subdued. But yeah, I think it feels very humbling. Someone who's doing really, really well, very respected and revered, giving thanks to someone who was a huge inspiration, and how they're saying, I wish you could see how well it's all going. I know you'd be really proud of me. And just that bit right at the end of it where his voice breaks up, it just gets me every time. It just makes me shiver that little bit. And I just think I can remember listening to that song and 3 or 4 of his others so much on that tour. And I didn't sort of deliberately think, oh, well, I'll listen to lots of Newton Faulkner while I'm in China. It wasn't that. It was just what I happened to do. And I always used to find that. It was, funnily enough, it was Justin Bieber, the first Hong Kong trip that I did. There were 4 or 5 of his songs. I taught quite a few of them to people. And when I was doing vocal exams, I'd have whole days where people would just do, you'd have 20 grade 3s and they'd all do Love Yourself, and you'd have 20 2s, they're all doing Baby, and you think, I know this so well now. So yeah, again, like whatever people might think about whoever, it doesn't bother me really. I'll listen to whatever I want, But yeah, Newton Faulkner on that China tour there. I just
Yeah.
remember that over and over and over. And yeah, I just think it's a lovely song.
It is, yeah. And it's one where, I come back to what I was saying about, capturing a particular sentiment or feeling or story in a song. That's when I first heard it. It was one of those ones where I've kind of thought that what he's describing there, if there's so much of you in me, is that the chorus line, something like that, isn't it? But that sentiment about how people live on through their impact on other people is one of those things where, like, that concept is something that I would love to express in a song somewhere. So when I heard this one, I was like, oh, that's it. He's kind of done it there, of like telling that story.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, like the way, when someone's died, they're not physically here anymore, but they do live on through the impact they have on lots of other people. It's one of the things that I love with Swan Song as well. Like, I started this in memory of to lose my grandma. But then it feels like a way that it feels like she's with me so much, because people ask about it a lot, and then it's like, it's a nice chance to talk about her. And like, if it wasn't for her, then I wouldn't be doing the things I'm doing now. So yeah, I thought it was a beautiful way of capturing that sentiment of how people live on through the people they impact in their lives.
I'm really sorry to hear about your loss, mate. And I'm really glad that this came from it. I'm sure she'd be I don't know her obviously, but what a wonderful thing to do. And I suppose, yeah, like when you've got things that last forever in that way. Something I'm really into, and this might not sound linked, but it really makes me think of something quite impactful. I went to see the new Saw film a few weeks back, and I've liked them for 20 years. A lot of the die-hard horror fans, oh, well, it's not this, it's not that. I don't watch it then. If you don't like ballet, don't go watch the ballet then. Leave it, go and do something you like. It's fine. I like it. And so before I watched this one, I watched all the other ones leading up to it. And there's a really nice quote. It's in the third one, I believe. And the quote is, "The key to immortality is live a life worth remembering." I like that. It's not a solution. It can't make you live forever, but it can make what you've done and what you stand for live forever, can't it? And I think the idea of leaving something behind. I was in my loft the other day moving a few things about, and I've got boxes and boxes of CDs, because I don't even own a CD player now apart from in my car. And however few you buy, you always seem to have too many of certain ones. I think I've just about run out of my first album now, and I've got lots of others. And on the one hand, I think, oh, these take up a lot of space, but on the other hand, I think I'm really proud of these, because I can remember recording this, and I can remember writing this, and on the third album that I did, my brother plays and sings on it, my mum plays on it, my dad plays on it. I play the tuba on it briefly, just one note. My daughter's on a couple of them. My partner's on one of them. It's nice to just kind of incorporate other things and other people, I think. And